Member for Castres South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today is a special day, a very special day, Mr. Speaker. And I want to start, Mr. Speaker, by the observation that there seems to be a notion that you must not ask questions during parliamentary debates or resolutions. That you're supposed to write questions if you want to ask any questions. And again, Mr. Speaker, it is reflective of a certain attitude and disposition that you would come to Parliament, the House of Assembly, as elected members, and people think it is unnecessary and out of place for you to ask questions on resolutions put before the House. And it is suggested to you, and supported by most members on the other side, that if you want to say anything, write it, and then we will decide if we want to answer you. Mr. Speaker, the people expect us to hold this government to account, and the people expect us to ask questions, and we will ask questions, Mr. Speaker. And the day will come, Mr. Speaker, very soon, when the ultimate question will be asked. The Leader of the Opposition and member for Castres says he cannot support this resolution. And I want to join him, Mr. Speaker, in making it very clear that I cannot support this borrowing, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, probably you grew up playing chess and draft and dominoes, and you know how to make moves, so when people are so predictable, you know the moves that they will make, and you'll be ready for them. And I heard the Prime Minister says, we talk about victimization and victimization, Mr. Speaker, as if it is not true, Mr. Speaker. And the member from Castres just hinted about somebody who spoke out and they terminated his rent. And they all laugh on the other side, especially the member from the Ernest South, especially him, Mr. Speaker. But there's a game called chess, Mr. Speaker, where you have to learn to play your pieces well, Mr. Speaker. And I will say no more, but over the next few days we'll be hearing a lot, Mr. Speaker, and a few people will be embarrassed, Mr. Speaker. This borrowing takes all the borrowing so far for the airport to almost $600 million. 100 million US from the Taiwanese Exim Bank, 75 million US from the consortium of banks, that's 175 million US, and 45 million US, taking it up to 220 million US, which is about 600 million EC dollars. And still climbing, Mr. Speaker, and still climbing, because the member from Castres East asked the question, where is the master plan? Where is the final figure for the refurbishment of this airport? Not the building of a new airport, the refurbishment of what St. Lucians were first told was of the terminal. The refurbishment of an airport, $600 million and climbing. And you listen, Mr. Speaker, to the repayment, 10 years grace, 40 years or 50 years to repay the loan. As if two persons get married and decide to have an expensive wedding, and they do have children, and the period for the repayment of the wedding expenses, 40, 50 years. By the time they're dead, the children have to pay for the wedding expenses. 50 years from now, we will still be repaying this loan. According to this, Mr. Speaker. And we all have to ask, is it necessary? Is it really necessary? Because this government came in and found in advanced stages arrangements with the same World Bank through the IFC for the refurbishment of the airport. There would be no debt repayment from St. Lucia. Of course, we'd have to list to an operator who would carry the cost. And this government felt this was not the best arrangement. They felt it was better to go back to an old model that they had that was suspect. Because when these members on this side came into power in 2011, they stopped the process that was in place because it was a process that had been contaminated. And we have heard in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, many times about what happened during this process. And I was so glad this morning that the member from Miku South came and he reported on Grindberg, because he promised the people of St. Lucia that he would have done an investigation into matters relating to the involvement of a member on his side from Castries Office in the old airport project. And he promised St. Lucians he would have done an investigation. We all saw the documents which were filed in Florida. Documents, Mr. Speaker, which show that both the Prime Minister and the member from Castries Office were active participants, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order. The member...
Point of order, please.
What's the point of order?
Honorable member, please.
The member from Castries South is making it out as if in fact that there was an investigation by the U.S. government into myself and also the members from Castries South. We have repeatedly shown evidence in the House that that is not the case, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it was a letter written by the then Attorney General requesting information from the U.S. government on the telephone records of Mr. Tony Asenza. But in that letter, she is the one who's made the allegation of wrongdoing on part of myself and the member from Castries Southeast, and has no evidence. In fact, the member on the other side would know that his government spent $1 million from Bob Lindquist, something that nobody in St. Lucia knew that was taking place, and up to now cannot deliver a final report or any report. So I would like him to withdraw that statement because there is absolutely no evidence of any wrongdoing on either my part or the member from Castries Southeast, and there's no case or investigation by the U.S. government into either one of us or anybody in St. Lucia for that matter of fact.
Honorable member, any statement to raise an allegation or to give the impression of an investigation against members of this House is a serious one. I cannot recall in my time in this chair whether or not documents have been so tendered to be documents of the House to substantiate what you're saying. Until such time, sir, or that you don't raise any allegations that is so serious against members.
Mr. Speaker.
I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. I'm just saying no document has been so tendered to me as Speaker to indicate such until such time, or that's that you're referring.
Mr. Speaker, I said the member promised the people of St. Lucia that he would undertake an investigation into the claims that the member from Castries Office and himself was implicated in a matter which was filed in Florida. That's what he said. He said he would investigate the claims that they are involved in a matter. Mr. Speaker, and by the way, I have the documents, and I have enough documents from United States authorities, Mr. Speaker. And if I get the assurance that it will be made documents of the House, I probably would make them documents, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I did not say they were implicated. I said he promised he would undertake an investigation into the speculation that they were involved, that they made numerous calls to a censor, and he said he would undertake an investigation. That's what I said. Am I wrong in this?
I'm just saying, sir, do not cross the line.
Yeah, I won't cross the line, Mr. Speaker.
Allegations.
I will be exceedingly careful, Mr. Speaker. And I heard the member from Miku South talk about $1 million spent on investigation into this matter.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, you see,
what's the point of order?
The member continues to mislead the House. Mr. Speaker, I cannot sit here and accept that a member in the Honorable House of St. Lucia will say something on television, infer that two of my colleagues are in such a serious matter, and he refuses to provide documents that he may have in possession. Mr. Speaker, he needs to withdraw the statement categorically.
Which statement?
The statement, you have made strong inferences which suggest that two of my colleagues are on the investigation. And you cannot just drop it as a passing by. Because, Mr. Speaker, the people of St. Lucia are watching this live on television. And he needs to address it. He needs to state categorically that he has no evidence to support any inference that he has made. So don't play clever.
Honorable Member, if he has documents, he would have to produce it if he's going to continue with any assertions or indicate further that members of this parliament are implicated in any way. Okay? So I have drawn a line for him. If he intends to cross it, that's a different thing. As of now, he stays on the line that I have besides on this side.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, while on his feet, the member did say that he has documents that if we want, he's willing to produce them. In that case, he should produce them.
No, the Speaker has ruled. Okay. You are the Speaker now.
Can I proceed, Mr. Speaker?
The Speaker has ruled.
I heard the Honorable Member.
That's not exactly what I said.
I cannot force the member. If I'm going to prevent him from crossing that line, then cause him to make documents.
So, Mr. Speaker, I cannot be wrong in saying that the member from Miku South said he would undertake an investigation. He said he would undertake an investigation to the Padua letter as well. He said so. He said so. He said he would undertake an investigation into WIPE. He said so. I'm not making those stories. He said so publicly, standing outside in the precinct of the Parliament, Mr. Speaker. But can I proceed, Mr. Speaker? I assure you, I will stay within the boundaries established by yourself. Because, but when you investigate, you file it. 3 years ago, it was stated in this House that there would be an investigation, Mr. Speaker.
Stay on track or else.
And say how much was paid to investigate my vehicle. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was waiting for the declaration to be made, and it was made today, Mr. Speaker. So we shall proceed, Mr. Speaker. And I will also add, Mr. Speaker, that a former member of the United Workers' Party government publicly stated, now you open up a can of worms, members from the other side, publicly stated that a member offered him $1 million as a bribe in the last airport project.
Honorable Member.
It was publicly said on television.
Honorable Member. There is a certain leeway. There's a certain leeway, Honorable Member. But you need to come right back to this resolution that is before us.
Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, and I am raising all those issues to show you, Mr. Speaker, there we had a PPP process, Mr. Speaker. And the government chose, and I want to sound like the Prime Minister, you know, how he was in his summing up a while ago, you know, that There you had a process, Mr. Speaker, for a PPP. His government stopped it. They went back to a process which was contaminated. And solutions are asking, why is it that you have a PPP process where St. Lucia would not be borrowing a cent, and instead you decide to use a process where today we are borrowing 45 million US. So far, a total of 600 million EC. Why? Can members opposite tell us why did you abandon the PPP and instead you went along this route, Mr. Speaker? And I think, Mr. Speaker, given the track record and the examples which I give, which members get nervous every time those examples are raised, Mr. Speaker, why are you doing this? Mr. Speaker, I was happy to hear the Prime Minister in his presentation say that these are World Bank funds and therefore they will be tendering. Because we all know on this side, and the people of St. Lucia know, that tendering is not the favorite practice of this government. It's not the favorite practice of this government. Because in the Exim Bank loan, we were told in this house that there's already a contractor. There's already a contractor. So there is a contractor. There's no tendering taking place. But today we're hearing that there will be tendering for the World Bank loans. So if there will be tendering for the World Bank loans, why is there no tendering for the Exim Bank loan and for the consortium of banks loan, Mr. Speaker? Why is there no tendering? And I must ask the question, Mr. Speaker, because for me, it's a very serious issue. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise another point. I have no confidence in this government to manage this project properly. The member from Miku South said they are efficient. This is a government that works. They can get things done. Mr. Speaker, 3.5 years ago, they stood and they talked about execution, execution, execution. I'm very suspect of this government, Mr. Speaker. And when we are borrowing $600 million and the total cost is not yet known, what if it is not managed properly? What if there are cost overruns? How much would this $600 million project end up costing? Is it $1 billion? And he said there was St. Jude, 130 million was spent on the West Coast Road. Let me take you to the Roseau Dam, Mr. Speaker. Let me take you to the Roseau Dam. And I want the people of St. Lucia to listen carefully to this one, Mr. Speaker. To listen carefully. I happened to look at the Gazette last week, Monday. Issue 25, Monday, July 13, 2020, page 886. A notice from the National Utilities Regulatory Commission, NURC, to cap the cost of the desilting of the Roseau Dam at $60 million EC dollars. $60 million, Mr. Speaker. And I ask, how can there be a notice in the Gazette saying that the dredging fee will continue and the project is now capped at $60 million? I knew that this project was only about, when we came to this house, about $43 million. But this is a government that works. This is a government that's efficient. This is a government that can do things properly. How does a project move from 43 million to 60 million?
Honorable Member.
So, I'm raising a concern on this motion that the borrowing is by a government that is known to mishandle projects, and 600 million can become 1 billion. And I want, Mr. Speaker, to give you the example to validate my concern on this resolution. So I am going to use the example of the Roseau Dam and expose to the people of St. Lucia how this government has mismanaged the Roseau Dam and how it's likely that this resolution, this borrowing, can lead to another fiasco, and 600 million can easily become 1 billion. I trust you will allow me
you've made the
to
point.
highlight the example. I want to give the examples.
You've made
Mr.
the
Speaker.
point. To go into further details is beyond the resolution.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it relates to Caribbean Development Bank and borrowing and institutions, Mr. Speaker. So please allow me, Mr. Speaker, please allow me to, elucidate the point, Mr. Speaker, and to bring it to light, Mr. Speaker, to show you how a project where we borrow X amount can end up almost twice the cost. Can I just show the details to show how the borrowing can actually escalate? And I'm using the example of the Gazette, where the National Utilities Regulatory Commission issued a notice capping the project because the project was getting so out of hand. So, Mr. Speaker, in January 2016, the Labour Party was in government. And the Labour Party negotiated with the Caribbean Development Bank a loan for $14.7 million US for the Roseau Dam project. That's the equivalent of 40 million EC. That's what the Labour Party negotiated with the Caribbean Development Bank. That project, of course, was proceeding. The government changed in June 2016. The member came here, a member from Babuno came to this house and said they were breaking up the project. Whereas the Labour Party had it in one, they were going to do it properly, they were going to break it up, there would be the site preparation works and there would be the dredging. In this honorable house, we were told this. In March 2018, Mr. Speaker, a contract was signed with Mega Contracting for the site preparation works. Now remember, we had a debate in this house where I raised questions about the tendering process and how contaminated it was. But let's put that aside for today. I just want you to see how this project and how borrowing can cause serious problems for the taxpayers of St. Lucia. In March, and remember I told you, the Labour Party negotiated with the Caribbean Development Bank for $40 million, 39.954000. The contract with Mega was for 17.9 million EC dollars. 17.9. Note it, Mr. Speaker. 17.9 with Mega. That's in March, Mr. Speaker.
The point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, honorable member for Babuno.
Mr. Speaker, it's not customary I stand on a point of order, but I want the member to make sure that he has his figures correctly, Mr. Speaker. The contract for Mega was $20,576,272.
Can I? Mr. Speaker, maybe when I'm finished, the honorable member will appreciate the point I'm making. In March, that was what was signed with Mega. In April, by letter to CDB, an addendum to CDB, CDB was informed that the loan from CDB for the dredging was $10,167,000, and it had a sum for the sediment disposal area, which is a non-bank finance component, for only $5.981 million, which is $15.9 million. So in March, a contract is signed with Mega for $17.9 million. But in April, CDB is told that that works, the letter to CDB, is $15.9 million. But by January 28, 2019, Wasco gives an addendum to Mega, and the contract that he was given for $17.9 million increases to $19.98 million. 19.98. Okay, 20 million. Mr. Speaker. So, by header point, Mega is given a contract for 17.9. A few months later, the contract is amended and increases by $2 million. By $2 million. a few months later. So the contract is given to them for X amount, and a few months later, it increases by $2 million. But here it is, Mr. Speaker. Provision is made for Mega to pay civil works engineer $100,000 a month services. Project manager, $125,000 a month services.
Honorable.
Geotechnical engineer, $150,000 a month, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, I think the member is getting out of hand now. I must say. Or out of order, whichever you want to say. I must say. Mr. Speaker, in January 2018, Mega Contracting signed a contract with Wasco for $20,576,272. That's a contract that was signed with Wasco. Wasco has no authority as to how Mega pay his workers. So you cannot come here, Mr. Speaker.
What's the point of order, Mr. Speaker?
No, but you're making it look like the paying the point of order is my responsibility.
It's my presentation, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Wasco has no authority over how Mega pays contractors or his workers.
Honorable.
Right?
Honorable.
And just Speaker, I think the point about we're discussing the airport. I don't know why we're going.
Yes, so that was my point when now.
Why are you responding?
Yeah.
But
Honorable.
Continue.
Yes, but then I think that the extra time or the leeway that
Mr.
you
Speaker, I
ask.
have 1 hour to make my presentation.
Huh?
Yes, you have an hour to make your presentation. However, it doesn't mean you have 1 hour to go beyond the scope. You ask for leeway. You ask for leeway to link or to show how the borrowing on one project can escalate, and therefore you don't stress this government on this borrowing.
Which is what I am doing.
Yes, but I'm saying that you've made the point. Let's get back to the resolution now.
You know what is most comical about this intervention? The member from Babono is stopping to correct me, to tell me the real figure is actually a little higher than what I said, by about $300,000. I said 19.9 million based on the document I have. You're stopping me to tell me I'm wrong. It's actually 20-point-something million, making it worse.
All right, honorable members,
So,
let's
Mr.
continue.
Speaker, let me continue.
Yeah, get to
The contractor cannot do the works, although the project has moved by almost $5 million more already. Wasco then buys.
Honorable member, this is not a debate on the desilting of the Roseau Dam.
Speaker.
The point you are making, and which you ask for leeway to do that, and I allow you to do it, is to show that the borrowing on the project can get out of hand to the point. And you were saying that you wanted to use the Wasco Dam project to highlight that point, that the current borrowing of $45 million may get out of hand. I'm saying to you now that you've made the point. And if anybody in here did not realize what you were saying, you've made your point. So I don't think we should continue the debate or you should continue a presentation on the line of the Roseau Dam project.
Okay, 2 more points and I'll end it, Mr. Speaker. Just to reinforce the point I was making. Same, the contractor cannot finish the works. Just like, Mr. Speaker, for the borrowing for those projects, Mr. Speaker, the contractor may not even be able to keep it within the budgeted amount. So Wasco buys a piece of equipment for the contractor that costs over $600,000 to be able to demoisturize the soil. It is never used because it was faulty. Who is responsible for buying that piece of equipment for $600,000? That's why we need to be careful, Mr. Speaker, when we borrow money for projects when we don't know what the final cost is and there is no tendering. These are the things that can happen. So, Mr. Speaker, a project, the Roseau Dam, that started off at $39.9 million is now capped at $60 million. $21 million more. And it is rising because the dredging company has been waiting for months at the dam to start dredging. Every day there is a cost on the government of St. Lucia. Every day, Mr. Speaker. So when you come to the House and say to us how efficient your government is, how effective your government is, I have little confidence, Mr. Speaker. I cannot accept that we have to approve borrowing, Mr. Speaker, of another 45 million US dollars. We do not have a master plan. We do not know what the final cost, Mr. Speaker. There are questions about the tendering for the services at the airport, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, how do you expect us to come in here, Mr. Speaker, and agree and support, Mr. Speaker, the borrowing of 45 million US dollars, Mr. Speaker? I have every reason, Mr. Speaker, to be doubtful, and until the government can provide full evidence, Mr. Speaker, of what the master plan is, what the total cost is, Mr. Speaker, then, Mr. Speaker, I cannot support this borrowing. Thank you very much.